Our next presenter is Dean Anderson. Dean is a licensed clinical social worker. He began his began as a practicing therapist in 1987. In 1991, he started a private practice. It's now called Lighthouse Counseling. He provides individual, marital, and family therapy for adults and adolescents. In 2006, he added life coaching to his repertoire of therapeutic techniques to assist individuals and couples in negotiating life and challenges. Since 1988, he's made a career at Wasatch Mental Health, where he is currently the program manager of the Westpark Family Clinic. Dean has a long and accomplished career. He got his associate's degree at Snow College, maybe a little bit before President Wyatt was president there.
Yeah, it was.
Got his bachelor's and master's degrees in 1985 and 87, respectively, from BYU in social work. He's received specialized training in life coaching and therapy, dealing with issues of life adjustment difficulties, depression and anxiety, grief and loss, marital difficulties, post-traumatic stress, bipolar, mental and physical disabilities, personality disorders, sexual dysfunctions, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse and domestic violence. As I read this, we may have to invite Dean back for future presentations because we talk about a lot of those. On a personal note, Dean is blind as a result of an inherited eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I just asked him if that's something you're born with. He says it's a genetic disease and that he started losing his sight in his early 20s. But he wrote here in his bio something that I think is very telling. He says this potentially debilitating eye condition has been a major catalyst for success in his life. He has a tenacious work ethic, resilient attitude, and support from family and others. He is a husband and father. He's been married for 37 years, has 5 children. His daughter Michelle is here driving him around. I think Layton City appreciates that. 5 children, 4 daughter-in-laws, a son-in-law, and 8 grandchildren. His passions include traveling, spending time with his family, training, mentoring, and encouraging his staff and providing quality care for the individuals, families, and couples under his care. He's received numerous awards in social work, mental health leadership, and was awarded the W. Eugene Gibbons Social Worker of the Year in 2007. We are honored and pleased to have him with us. He's going to talk to us again about bias, friend or foe. During the break, told him that it was okay that he repeats some of what President Wyatt said, because as President Wyatt said, most of us are going to forget most of what we learned. So if we keep hearing this over and over, hopefully it'll sink in. And so with that, Michelle, if you want to bring your dad up, and we will turn the time over to Dean Anderson. Oh, I forgot. And Dean really does want this to be interactive. So Marilyn has been getting your emails and your texts, and so you can text me as well. And so please send in those comments and questions. All right, Dean.
Okay, hello everyone. Good to be with you today. This is interesting. Usually when I do presentations, I'm presenting to other therapists or lay people. This is the first time I've been able to present to attorneys. So hopefully this will be informative and helpful to you, and you'll enjoy our discussion today. So as Bob said, I really would like this to be more interactive than me just lecturing. I'm going to ask you for your input and your thoughts, and hear a little bit about your biases and things as we visit here today. What else do I need to introduce? Like Bob said, I'm mostly blind, so if any of you here in the room want to make a comment or something, my wife's a school teacher and she tells her kids, don't just blurt out, raise your hand. Well, when I do presentations, it's the opposite. Don't raise your hand. If you raise your hand and expect me to call on you, your hand's going to be up all day, right? So just jump in and say, hey, Dean, I've got a comment or a question or whatever, and we'll address you. And so if any of you in our audience have anything you want to add, those of you who are, I'm used to the word telehealth. I guess we're not on telehealth here, but we're telecommunicating. If you have some comments, give Marilyn a quick email and she'll jump in and give us your comments or questions. So yeah, doctor, boy, he even said he's not a doctor, right? President Wyatt talked a lot about some of the similarities to some of the things that I want to present and talk about today. He and I apparently were on similar wavelengths, but primarily I was asked to talk a little bit about bias in mental health. Now, in one of my responsibilities as the program manager at Wasatch Behavioral Health is that I am the administrator for the mental health court in Utah County. So I oversee the mental health aspect of 3 mental health courts in Utah County. And so some of what I'm going to be talking a little bit about will be flavored to, as you as prosecutors look to say, is there mental health involved here? Is there mental illness going on with this person? Maybe you'll have a few ideas and a few ways to look at your own biases and say, how can I get past my own biases to look at this person with mental health concerns in an effective way and do what's best for the public, the community, and this person. So that's a little bit about the frame of where I'm going to be coming from. So now, if we can make sure we get all of our equipment lined up here and our technology working together here, I'm hoping that this will go well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about biases. This great man up here on the screen here is my father, George M. Anderson. He was born in 1924, and he had lots of what we kids call Georgisms. He had lots of quotes. One he taught me, for example, was there's no disadvantage so great that there's not some advantage with it. And boy, has that helped me as I've lost my vision over the years. There's no disadvantage so great there's not some advantage with it. So what are the advantages of being blind? Well, geez, there's lots. You know, I can sleep day or night. Doesn't matter to me, right? I tell my wife that I'm the lucky one here because when we get old, she's going to have this wrinkly old man to look at, and I'm still going to have this hot young girl to remember. Right? I'm not going to have to worry about seeing her wrinkles, but she's going to be stuck looking at my ugly face. So another one of my dad's favorite quotes that I've enjoyed over the year is that we are the sum of our experiences. Right? So President Wyatt talked a little bit about this. So let me tell you a little bit about just quickly my dad's life as we get into how this plays out. So my dad was born in 24. That means he was a teenager through the Great Depression. His dad taught him that rather than go down to the hardware store and buy a new cotter pin for 10 cents, you make one out of smooth wire. Right? You don't spend money that you don't have to. So when he sees my generation or the next generation, cell phone wears out in 6 months or a year or 2 years, whatever, and we throw it away and buy a new one, what bias is going on in his head, right? So then you think, okay, so he grew up, and when he was 21, just months after he got married, Uncle Sam said, hey, we've got other plans for you. You need to drop out of college and go to the Philippines and fight some Japanese. So if you think about, my dad served in the Philippines, like I say, he had some pretty heavy-duty combat, should have been killed many times, miraculously was spared. So being around Japanese and some of the things that went on in that part of his life, we were talking this morning about Asian people, and the only Asian person I saw was, what do you say, 5 foot or something like that. So every Asian person is short. Well, I wonder what biases my dad got over the years about Japanese people. Well, this kind of came to a head when one of my nephews, my dad's grandson, brought home a Japanese fiance and now wife. So you can imagine some of what might have been going on in his mind as he's deliberating about, oh my gosh, Japanese, they're the enemy, they're terrible to our soldiers, their prison camps were yikes, yikes, yikes. Okay, so my dad taught me as a young boy that we are the sum of our experiences. And I found as I work in mental health and as I work with people in therapy, that is very true. So our brain develops much like a pile of dirt or this slide. So let's suppose that we have this big dump truck comes along, dumps this big pile of dirt, and along comes a big rain cloud, and that rain trickles down and hits the pile of dirt. And okay, so here's your chance to participate. Where does that water go when that hits that pile of dirt? Down the hill. You're right. Trickles down the side of the hill. And then what does it start to carve in that dirt pile as it trickles down the side of the hill? Little gullies, little rivulets, little trails, whatever. That's exactly right. So over time, as more and more rain comes along, hits that pile of dirt, where does the new water go? Right down those same little trails. Right? And as it goes down those trails over and over and over, what happens to those little trails? Wider and deeper, right? That's the erosion thing. Well, that's kind of what happens in our brain when we're born. When we're first born, we've got this brand new little brain, and there's not much carved into it. We can cry and wet our diaper and sleep, and that's about it. But over time, life works like that rain on a dirt pile. Our parents teach us, and our school teachers teach us, and the bullies teach us, and the TV and all of our life experiences come together to train us and teach us how you do life, what life's made of, what goes on in life, what's real, what isn't real. Now, real is up for grabs. Right? Depending on our background, depending on our experiences. So our brain learns through some interesting ways, through 4 basic ways. When our neural pathways in our brain are being carved, we learn through repetition, consistency, duration, and intensity. So the intensity piece, let's suppose you're driving down the road and you pass through an intersection and a car runs a red light and T-bones you, bam. That's an intense experience. You learn immediately, very quickly, the importance of checking both ways and being extra cautious when you go through stoplights to make sure the other cars are minding their manners and we're minding the law and stopping at the red lights that we need to. Other things we learn through repetition. So here's President Wyatt was a little bit vulnerable this morning, so I'll be a little bit vulnerable with you too. When I was a boy growing up in southern Utah, we had a dormitory where they would bring in Navajo Indians from the reservation, and they would live there and then come to the various high schools in the area. I had a few good experiences with some of those folks, and 1 or 2 of them became my friends, but the majority, they were not good experiences. Had some difficulties with some of them. I won't go into all the details, but I developed some biases about Navajo Indians. And so as I developed then into an adult and now into my career, I've had to be aware that, okay, those things that happened repetitiously as a kid with some of those people does not mean everybody, does not mean this person. And so I've had to be conscious of that. So we learn through repetition. When things happen over and over, they're consistently. So my favorite example of this is playing the piano. How many of you play piano?
Yes.
Yes? One? Couple? Okay, so when you play a piano, you're focusing very carefully on, you know what, I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to jump ahead to a slide. Nichelle, help me out here. What's that one?
Straight jacket. To regulate. Oh, monitor and modify.
There we go. System 1, System 2. Okay, so President Wyatt talked about System 1, System 2 this morning. Now, when I teach this to my clients, I like to switch the way that Dr. Kahneman talks about in his book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and I apologize, we got the author wrong here on my slide. I've got to go back and have my secretary fix that. I don't know where that came from, but we got it wrong. But in his book, he talks about the System 1, System 2. Let me review quickly just for your benefit. Well, again, in the book, it's opposite of how I teach it. And President Wyatt talked about it opposite of how I teach it too. So flip it with me if you would, please. So I call System 1 where our brain is conscious. It is awake, it's alert, it's paying attention, it's focused, it's very aware, it's very purposeful. System 2 is automatic. It just does what it does automatically. We've had enough experiences, and so it just happens automatically. Okay, so playing the piano is a good example. When we're playing a piano, when we're first learning how to play, and we're pounding that keyboard, our teacher is teaching us, and we are in System 1. We're very conscious about where our fingers are going, how we're stretching our fingers across the keys, and what our fingers are doing and how the sound's coming out. Once we've practiced that song multiple times, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 100 times, whatever, our brain has been in System 1. It's been conscious, it's been aware, alert, paying attention. But once it says, okay, I got this, I know what to do with it, it slides it into System 2, so that from then on, playing that song is all automatic. So we can sit down at the piano, we can be singing, we can be talking to our friend, whatever, and our hands know exactly what to do, our brain knows exactly what to do. We're playing that song, it's all automatic. So that happens in so many things of life. Buttoning our shirt, tying our shoe, driving a car. My favorite example of System 1 here is, System 1 is when we're, say, I live in Provo. So let's say I'm driving to Salt Lake from Provo, and I'm cruising down the freeway, and all of a sudden I pull off the freeway and, I'm telling you System 2. So a good example of System 2, the automatic pilot. I'm driving to Salt Lake, I get into downtown, and all of a sudden I kind of wake up and say, oh, I'm here. I don't even remember passing 90th South or Point of the Mountain. Right? We've had that experience sometimes. We just kind of do things automatically. We don't even think about it. It's just all automatic. But a System 1 example of this is maybe driving to Salt Lake in a snowstorm. And we are very conscious. Now that snow is coming down, blowing everywhere. There's cars slid off the road. The road's ice packed. We are very conscious about slowing down quicker than we need to. And when we're passing cars and turning on our blinker and hitting our brakes softly and all those kinds of things. So System 1 then is when we're conscious, we're focused, we're paying attention. System 2 then is when it's all automatic. It just happens without even thinking about it. It's automatic. All right, Michelle, I got to go back if you would please. My technology, I'm having to use the computer here, so I don't have my speech software on here. So I'm not sure which slide I'm hitting. So, oh, that's Grandpa. Okay, and that's the dirt pile. Okay, so our brain then, right, Michelle? Our brain learns through the consistency, things that we do over and over, repetitiously, etc. Okay, so once those neural pathways are carved in our brain, they become the schemas or the paradigms that drive how we function, that drive how we operate. So if I believe, for example, that every Asian person is short, from then on, my automatic System 2 beliefs are going to be all Asian people are short, or all Navajos are bad, or all, whatever bias we've come to. Okay, now some of you have probably seen this slide. Maybe you saw this in your psychology class. Anybody not seen this picture before? I'm going to give you just a second to look at this picture. Somebody tell me what's in this picture.
Old woman.
An old woman.
Young woman.
Wait a minute. Which one? A young woman or an old woman?
Young woman.
Oh.
The young woman. Okay, actually, they're both there, right? There's a young woman and an old woman both. So you can see the young woman. Can you see the old woman too? You can? Everybody can? Okay. So,
I cannot. I didn't until somebody said old woman. I saw the young woman first, now I see the old woman. I can't find the young woman again.
The old woman is looking sort of more towards your
the young woman's looking over her shoulder, or the old woman's got her chin down on her chest.
The young woman's chin
Yes. Yes. And how about the choker?
Joker.
Yeah.
The choker on the young woman is what in the old woman? The mouth.
I have a bias.
Okay, so this slide is about perspective. And oftentimes in our lives, we, through the biases, the schemas, the neural pathways, the belief systems, whatever you want to call it, that we develop in our lives, we develop a perspective, and we start to see things a certain way. Even though there's other things there, we don't often see the other things because we're so used to looking at a certain way, right? So perspective is everything. How you look at situations makes all the difference in the world, and how you perceive the world. And so we got to really be conscious about and careful about what it is, what our biases are, our perspective is, what we're looking at. If I had more time and to go a little bit more detail, that might be a little bit more helpful, but I'm just noticing I better keep moving. So let's talk about blindness for a minute. This is something I have a little bit of experience with.
This slide is the old one.
Oh, thank you so much. I got to change both computers so I can keep up, and I got to remember to change both. Thank you. So what are your biases? What are your thoughts or beliefs about blind people? So just throw that out there. I don't know what experience any of you have had with blind folks, but what is your belief about blind people?
Hey, Mrs. Bob, I made the assumption that you needed Michelle to help get you to the table.
Okay, made the assumption they needed her to help me get to the table. All right, good. What else?
I would think that they're depressed a lot.
Depressed a lot? Okay. Yep.
Especially someone like you that has, grew up seeing and now can't.
Yep. A lot of people ask me, is it better to lose your vision all at once, or lose it gradually, or to never have it, or it depends on your perspective. Depends on how you look at it. All right? Any other thoughts about blind people? Okay, so who are they? Right? Let me tell you 3 quick experiences. In the 60s and 70s, there was a belief amongst the airlines that blind people were incompetent, could not hold their bowels, could not be trusted to fly on an airplane alone. And so there were some laws in place that blind people had to sit on a plastic bag, so when they soiled the seat, it wouldn't ruin the seat. They couldn't sit with their family. They had to sit at the front of the airplane, and they took away their cane because it could be used as a weapon. I don't know too many blind people that wet their pants all the time. I suppose there's some. But that was the belief at the time. That was the bias. And so in the early 70s, several of the blind people in that day had some protests and some sit-ins, and a few of them refused to give up their cane, refused to sit on the plastic seat, and were arrested and incarcerated because they would not obey those laws. And fortunately, through enough activists and lobbyists that went and advocated, and blind people stood up for themselves, those laws have now been changed. So when I fly, I don't have to sit in the front and sit on some plastic thing, and by golly, I can keep my cane with me. There was a gentleman here in Utah, Primo Foianini is his name, was one of those gentlemen here in Utah that was arrested for staying in his seat and refusing to move and sit on the plastic bag. Thank goodness a lot of those biases have evolved and were coming, but So when I graduated, here's my second story. When I graduated from graduate school, I went applying for jobs. I went to a local treatment facility in Provo, and I interviewed with the person. When I finished the interview, he said to me, before you came in here, I thought there was no way a blind guy could do this job. But after talking to you, I don't know, maybe you could. Well, I didn't get that job. I've been told many, many times that I couldn't do this or that or the other. Well, I like to go snow skiing. I do home repairs. I run a table saw. I've run a table saw for 30 some years now. I do all those things. I can very well hold a job. I started my own business, my own private practice 30 years ago, and have had a success. So can I do it? Well, his bias was that I couldn't. Another experience. About 3 weeks or a month ago, I had one of my therapists on staff come into me and she said, I just did an intake on a 7-year-old little boy. And his hero was Daredevil. You guys remember the movie Daredevil? About the blind superhero? So this little boy, this little 7-year-old boy, his hero is Daredevil. And he was not talking very much in the evaluation. And so my therapist said, one of my therapists who's doing this evaluation said to the little boy, gosh, we have a blind guy here. He's my boss. He said, you do? Could I meet him? And he was so excited. So after their session, he came down. I showed him my cane. I showed him my talking computer and my Braille watch and let him type on my computer and some of those kind of things. And he was just so excited to meet me. You'd have thought he'd met the President of the United States or something. When I got done, I said, is there anything else I can do for you? He says, can I have a hug? We're in COVID times and I'm going, I looked at his mom and mom says, yeah, it's okay. And I said, it's okay with me. It's okay. We both had masks on. So I gave him a quick little hug and let him go. Cutest little kid. So I don't know. Are blind people sitting on a street corner holding out a cup? Is that what they're capable of? Are they Daredevil? One of my favorite attorneys is a blind man by the name of Ron Gardner. I don't know if any of you know my friend Ron Gardner. He was the director of the Disability Law Center for many years. So, I guess blind people are what we perceive them to be, at least our perspective, right? Okay, so let's talk about people with mental illness. What are your beliefs about people with mental illness?
The screen is black.
What's that?
The screen is black.
Oh, the screen is black. The screen is black. How do I get the screen back?
Or downstairs. What are your beliefs?
There we go. Okay, thank you. I guess it just goes to sleep or something. So what are your beliefs about people with mental illness?
Challenging.
Challenging?
Hard to relate to.
Hard to relate to? Yep. Say again?
Difficult.
The cult?
No, difficult.
Oh, difficult.
Why can't they get better?
Why can't they get better? Yeah. Or maybe they can't get better.
They don't understand what they're doing.
They don't understand what they're doing. Excellent. Excellent. Yep. Okay. Here's, there's just like blindness. Our beliefs are that they ought to be in a straitjacket, or maybe they're normal people. Okay. It's interesting how there's a lot of myths that go around. All right. So there's lots and lots of myths about people with schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever. It's black again?
And straight jacket. Beliefs. Straight jacket. Yes.
There we go. Thank you. Not sure why it's going black on us. Caused by bad parenting. How many of you heard people with schizophrenia had a bad mother? She was a terrible mother, so the kid developed schizophrenia. Anybody heard that one? That was a common one probably 20, 30 years ago when I started my career. Caused by sin? If you weren't breaking the commandments, you wouldn't be depressed. If you were going to church every week, if you were doing what you're supposed to, right? Lack of spirituality can be cured by reading scriptures and having prayers. We can cure it. I wish. Can be stopped if we have enough desire. People choose to be depressed. There's a good one. Right? I've been depressed a few times in my life, and I tell you what, it's not something I just say, you know what? I think I want to be depressed. That sounds like fun. Right? Medications are always needed? No, not always. There's a good one. People with mental illness are violent. You heard that one? No, they're violent. They must be mentally ill. Can't hold down a job? Just get over it. There's a good one. Just get over it. And maybe you've seen the Bob Newhart, him trying to pretend to be a therapist. He's talking to this client. She tells him the problem, and he says, well, just stop it. Just stop it. Yeah, I wish it was that easy. Okay, can never recover? Boy, I'm glad that one's not true. All righty. So what are the facts? Well, whoops. That work? Okay, so some facts. Any of these surprise you? Some people don't know they're depressed. We don't know what it is. Another interesting.
Question was that
Yeah.
they don't know they're depressed. Is it they have feelings of sadness, anxiety, and they just don't identify?
Don't know what it is. Yeah, don't understand it, don't know what it is. Yeah, and another interesting thing that even people who understand depression don't understand is that there's two kinds of depression. A situational kind and a biochemical kind. The situational kind, it comes from situations in life. We lost a loved one, we're divorced, we had some abuse as a child, or whatever. Situations create some depression. There's biochemical kinds of depression, just like diabetes. So in diabetes, a part of the pancreas isn't functioning. It's not producing the right amount of insulin, or maybe it's not even producing insulin. So medications then go in and help the pancreas or replace what the pancreas isn't doing. Well, some kinds of depression are the same way. It's a biochemical problem in the brain, where the brain just is not producing enough endorphins or dopamine, and so the medications have to replace or stimulate the brain to produce more. So sometimes people say, gosh, why am I so depressed? Everything in my life is good. I've got a good spouse, good kids, good job. Why am I depressed? Well, you don't have to have anything going wrong in your life to have some depression. It's just a biochemical thing that your brain's not functioning properly. So sometimes people get more depressed because they say, why am I depressed? I shouldn't be. Everything's great in my life. Why am I feeling depressed? And that gets them more depressed when they realize, oh, okay, my brain's just malfunctioning. It's not that there's something wrong in my life. That's sometimes quite refreshing. Okay. Yeah, medication, psychotherapy is helpful. There's a good one. Healing requires a change in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And I wish we had a couple hours to spend more on that one, but I forget these are attorneys, not therapists. That is interesting. Only a small percentage of violent crimes are committed by mentally ill people. Okay, so I think we can see the rest of those. So we talked a little bit about System 1, System 2. If we recognize, well, let me back up. We need to recognize our biases. We've got to be in System 1. When you have a mentally ill person come in front of you, for example, and you're saying, oh, this is a mentally ill person, we can just let them go because they're mentally ill. Or you might have the belief, oh, this person's mentally ill, so they belong in mental health court. Well, they're mentally ill. They don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. There might be some truth in that, but we got to be careful that we're acting and reacting on actual knowledge and getting the best information we can about this person to make the best decision we can. So that requires us to be in System 1. We've got to be conscious and alert and purposefully learning and seeking information and making decisions based on that information, not based on our System 2 belief systems that are just automatic. Okay, so Dr. Dan Siegel at the UCLA, did that change okay?
Yeah. Oh, you're in System 1. Monitor.
Thank you. Sometimes the remote works and sometimes it doesn't. So Dan Siegel talks about how we've got to use monitoring and modifying in our work. For example, if we're driving a car, we are constantly monitoring and modifying. We're monitoring if we're staying in our lane, if we're getting close to our turn, if we've got a stoplight coming up, and we're modifying our driving based on our monitoring. So we pay attention to what we're doing, and when we make adjustments based on the input and the knowledge that we're getting coming in. So that's what we have to do in law too. As we're working with clients, we have to be educating ourselves so that we know what to monitor, what's accurate, what's not. If we're driving down the road like I might, not being able to see, we could get ourselves in some real trouble. Right? If you're not watching, paying attention, you're driving down the road like this, you're going to be in trouble. So same thing is true in our practice. We've got to be conscious and paying attention to what's going on so that we can make sure we accurately make decisions. righty. Okay. So, what are your thoughts about this question? What ideas have you got, again, about how do we overcome our biases? How do we evaluate what's going on in our practice so that we can be conscious and recognizing our bias and making the best choices, decisions we can for our clients? Let's have some discussion about this for a couple minutes. And if any of you on the out and about want to send a comment to Marilyn about this, you're welcome to do so. How do we face our bias? How do we get conscious of them? And then how do we learn to manage them? What are your thoughts?
I think one of the things we have to do is we have to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. If all I ever do is stay where I'm comfortable, then I'm never going to be able to overcome any of my biases, whether it's mental health, race, gender, any of these other things that we talk about. If I only ever stay where I'm comfortable, I will probably never be able to, one, either figure out that I might have that bias, or two, be able to overcome it.
Very true. Very true. And that goes back to what President Wyatt was talking about, right? We've got to go to other countries, step outside of our comfort zone, meet other people. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, just one comment is that the people online can't hear the comments or questions here. If you wouldn't mind.
That's what I'm trying to repeat him. Yeah. Thank you. So his comment was, we've got to step outside our comfort zone and go other places and meet other people. Was that a good summary of what your comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good, excellent. What else?
I guess recognizing that if you, take the mentality of they're mentally ill, let's just let them go, that if they don't get the services they need, they may continue to commit crimes.
Okay, so we need to recognize, correct me if I'm not summarizing right, we need to recognize
that they need help.
That they need help and help them get the service they need.
Not addressing their underlying issues isn't going to...
Very good. Not addressing their underlying issues is not going to help society or help them. We've got to address those underlying issues first. Okay?
I have a question, Dean. Do the large percentage of people that you work with recognize that they have some type of a mental health issue?
So the question is, do a large percentage of the people we work with recognize they have mental health concerns? It really depends. It really depends. It depends on the situation, the level of denial, what kind of bias they have already. I mean, for generations, there's been a stigma about mental health. That if you have mental health concerns, man, you're weird, you're out there, you're flawed, you're broken, there's something wrong with you. It's contagious, it's terrible. Ugh. So some people are la, 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 la when you tell them they have a mental illness. They don't want to hear that. Fortunately, we're overcoming a lot of those stigmas and biases, and people are much more accepting about those kinds of things now than they ever have been before. So sometimes people have conditions where they can't see it. A person who's psychotic, for example, maybe they have schizophrenia or a bipolar condition where they have some psychosis involved also. They often don't see the psychosis. Their thinking is absolutely as coherent and clear as yours and mine, but it's way out there. So sometimes people understand and get it, and sometimes they don't. Some people refuse to, and some people are very willing to own it. The interesting thing is, like any challenge, like a diabetic or my blindness problem, when I started losing my vision, I had to get some training on how to be a successful blind guy. So I had to learn some Braille. I had to learn how to use a cane. I had to learn how to listen to this computer jabber in my ear and lots of other things. How to do therapy, not being able to see people's nonverbals, right? I had to learn how to adapt and adjust. So if people are willing to recognize that they have a mental health concern or whatever and get some help for it and learn how to manage their illness, just like a diabetic, we learn how to manage it. We take medications, we eat our diet properly, we get the right exercise, we manage it, we can function well. Same with mental health concerns. If they learn how to manage it, they can function well. Some people understand that, some don't. That's part of our jobs to help them with that, to teach them that they can do that and how to do that.
So what is the prosecutor's role? If you've got a defendant who has mental health issues and is not willing or is unable to recognize that? What's our role?
So, what is the role of a prosecutor in all this? I think it starts with we have to understand our own biases. Let me give you one more little, I'll be vulnerable one more little time here. I never knew any people who were gay until I went on my mission for the LDS Church to the Philippines, where gayness is a very open thing. It's flaunted. I was propositioned numerous times with suggestions of things they wanted to do to me that my first exposure to that was a very negative exposure. And so when I came home and wanted to be a therapist and started working with people with that difference, I had to really become conscious of what that bias was, where it came from, what the realities were. I had to go to some conferences, read some books, get some training so I can really understand the facts and not just run off my automatic system 2 thoughts of what is involved in a gay person's life. And so that's, I think, where it starts. With mental health, as much as you can, attend a mental health court conference. Maybe even just go to a mental health court. If any of you ever been, if you haven't ever been assigned to a drug court or a mental health court, I guess in this court, a mental health court, you ought to maybe go to a couple of sessions with your prosecutor and learn what it's all about. Go to a mental health center, take a tour, see the outpatient clinic, maybe go some of the clubhouses is a model of treatment that many of the mental health centers across the country use. They have a group called Stigma Busters. Stigma Busters is a group of people who have mental health concerns who go around talking to universities, high schools, wherever they're invited, a law practice, to talk about stigma and how do we bust those stigmas. And so get educated so that you understand really what mental illness is, what the facts are, what people that look like that are dealing with their mental health concerns, what people look like that don't deal with their mental health well, who's getting treatment, who's not, so you can kind of get a flavor of what that looks like. So you can see, for example, if you're trying to refer somebody to mental health court, you can see this person really could benefit from treatment, so you can make an appropriate referral. If our bias, again, is that all mentally ill people just need to be let out of jail because they don't know what they're doing, that's not accurate, because most people with mental health concerns, they need consequences for their choices just like everybody else. So getting educated, recognizing your bias. Other thoughts? Marilyn, any thoughts coming in from outside? Okay. Alrighty. So 2 weeks ago, I attended the domestic violence conference here in Utah, one of the domestic violence conference put on by the UADVT. In that conference, Judge Baxter, Judge John Baxter was maybe some of you know Judge Baxter. He was a presenter at the conference. And as he was on a panel discussing bias, I thought, oh my gosh, bias is the theme of the day, I guess. He was talking about bias. And here's the quote from Judge Baxter. Boy, I thought he was spot on. Once you understand your bias, you can more successfully navigate and negotiate those bias and then make the decisions and choices that are most effective for that person. So I thought, okay, Judge Baxter, you get it. You get system 1, system 2, you get monitoring and modifying. Okay? All righty. So here's a couple of suggestions for you. Looks like I'm going to be done a few minutes early and have a few minutes for questions here. To effectively serve the mental health, here's a couple of things I would suggest. Become conscious where biases came from, what they are. This is an important one. Confide in a trusted person. Talk to them about, here's what I've always believed. What do you think? What's your understanding about this? Talk to a person that you trust. Talk about your biases. Get their input. It's kind of like if we keep our head in the sand all the time, That's like the ostrich who keeps his head in the sand with a lion lurking who's looking for dinner. Do you know what we call that ostrich? Dinner. That's exactly right. Dinner. Right? So talk to people, talk to knowledgeable people. Have a presenter on mental health come talk to you about mental health, right? Go to mental health, get the accurate information, talk to the knowledgeable people. And notice the last part there about what accurate expectations are. Sometimes we don't know what's appropriate to expect from somebody who has schizophrenia or bipolar or PTSD or depression or whatever else. So get the information on what are the appropriate expectations. Some of the prosecutors that I work with in our mental health courts, I really appreciate, well, the judges too. Sometimes they will say, hey, Dean, help me understand blah, 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 blah. How does this work? Or with depression, what does that look like? And I think that's very helpful to be able to have those conversations and discussions. So we want to modify, we want to change our biases. We want to help ourselves understand, okay, the way I grew up, the way I learned is maybe not totally accurate. Maybe there's some differences here that I need to consider, and I need to change my bias. I need to change and evolve what I think, feel, believe. I need to change those neural pathways or paradigms and schemas. And so we go to work to confront those and challenge them and work to evolve them. Again, remember that our brain learns in System 1 through repetition and consistency and duration. So we want to consistently look at what our bias is and continuously question it and challenge it so that we can make that evolution occur in our brain. Our brain doesn't change overnight. Too often we have clients come in and they do 2 or 3 or 4 sessions and they say, okay, I got it, I'm done. But real change does not happen that fast. Now, in domestic violence, the law in California and some other states is that if you refer them to treatment, the law is that you have to have 52 weeks of treatment. Other states are less. The Utah's law used to be 16. Now that's been changed. Some of you probably know that law better than I do, but that law was, I think, eliminated. So we don't require, if you're referred to treatment, we don't require a number, which is good. Leave that to the clinicians to decide. But at the same time, we get caught up in too short and too brief of treatment. Why do you think California has 52 weeks of treatment requirement?
Takes time to change.
Takes time to change. Exactly right. The program that I run, I've been running one of our domestic violence group now for the last 23 years. And we make ours be about 26 to 28 weeks, somewhere around 6 months. What we find is people that get into treatment oftentimes don't want to come to DV treatment. The court made them come. They don't believe they need treatment. It's everybody else's problem and fault. But it's not till about 3-4 months into treatment that some of them start to say, oh man, this is good stuff. I should have been paying attention earlier. Can I start this over again and go back and relearn now because I wasn't tuned in before? So treatment takes a while. Mental health court, for example, we have our mental health court in Provo, our district court, is between 15 and 18 months. And the quickest a person could get through is about 12, if they're real lucky. Usually it takes a bit longer. And one of the reasons for that is because it takes time for us to change our neural pathways. It takes time for you and I and our clients to change those biases. So we really want to work at it and stay focused at it. We have to be, it's like playing the piano. Consistency over time to learn that piano piece or to change our bias. Okay? Make a conscious choice. Again, that's part of System 1. Make a conscious choice to choose differently and to look at situations differently than maybe you had in the past. If you stay in System 2 and always operate from that perspective, always on automatic pilot, you're never going to make a conscious choice. So we have to push ourselves. Most clients that come in are in System 2. They're in automatic pilot about some of the dysfunctional things they've grown up with or learned or maladaptive ways of dealing with their marriages or life or whatever. So we have to help them consciously get into System 1 to make that change. And sometimes it takes a therapist to remind us, okay, remember, that's the old way. What's the new way of thinking? What's the new paradigm? We have to carve new neural pathways in our brain, like that dirt pile. We have to send water down that dirt pile in a new way to make those stick.
I have a question.
Yes.
A question came in, a little off topic, and I don't know who this is from. My experience with schizophrenia is they claim to be an undercover agent, like CIA, FBI. What is the pull to this profession as opposed to Gandhi or, say, Mother Teresa?
So schizophrenia, there's several different kinds of schizophrenia. I don't know if you could hear the question. The question was about schizophrenia, and is the person who thinks they're what? Part of the CIA and the FBI. Is that normal? Is basically what they're asking, I think. And is that consistent with Mother Teresa or Gandhi or whatever? With schizophrenia, there are various different types of schizophrenia. One of the most common ones we see is paranoid schizophrenia. Usually the belief is that the CIA or the FBI are after them. I don't see too often that they feel like they're the CIA. Sometimes they think they're Jesus or a prophet or some religious delusional kind of stuff. We don't see too often that they believe they're the CIA. Usually it's the paranoia somebody's out to get them. So somebody's trying to poison them. One of the reasons they hate to take their medications is the government's poisoning them. It's a conspiracy to poison them and take away their ability to think. And so, yeah, there's different beliefs. Again, Gandhi and Mother Teresa and all have had their different perspectives on mental illness and those kinds of things. I'm not quite sure what to say about those. I guess the thing to remember is not all people with schizophrenia have paranoia. Not all of them have those delusional beliefs or hear voices. Many of them do. Some of it is just a disorganization in their thinking. They have very loose associations in their conversations. They're very tangential. You can't understand and track what they're talking about because it's so off topic and here, there, and everywhere. And so you have to understand that there's not one size fits all. Schizophrenia is a very diverse kind of a challenge, but it's the brain malfunctioning, and oftentimes they don't see it. So hopefully that answers at least part of the question. Okay, so I think we're to the question part of our presentation. Looks like I got about 5 minutes, and that's the end of what I've prepared. So I'm interested, do you have any thoughts or comments or questions that you'd like to address? Anything coming in from outside, Marilyn?
That's all I can see.
So
Okay.
I had an individual who was diagnosed. I don't recall what the diagnosis was. I want to say it was OCD, and went through treatment, was put on medication, didn't like the way the medication made him feel, so he went off, and we were right back to square one. Is that common?
Yes, it's common in all kinds of things. I know a woman who happens to live in Washington who is on diabetes medication. She didn't like her medication, so she went off of them. She didn't like the side effects, so she went off. It's a common thing in any kind of medicine. Yes. So what we try to do is help them understand our bodies and our brains in this situation work differently with different kinds of medications. That's why there's different medications. You will find, for example, one medication a person tolerates very, very well, and another person will not tolerate it well at all. They have bad side effects. It won't be effective for them. I have a brother-in-law who has some depression. He went through multiple medications before he found a combination of two medications that worked well. Once they found the right combination, he said, "Oh my gosh, it's a whole new world. I feel like the cloud's been lifted and I can think clearly again. I feel clearly again. Holy cow." So sometimes we have to educate people. Okay, one medication didn't work well for you. I get that. Yep, your body didn't tolerate that one very well. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's try a different one and a different one and a different one till we find something that works as good as possible. And we have to remember that many of the mental illnesses are biochemical problems. They're like diabetes. They're not going to go away, right? And so we talk about recovery. Recovery is a big thing in mental health. And recovery means different things to different people. And then there's the concept of recovery from versus recovery in. So recovery from would indicate what? If I'm going to recover from something, what does that mean? I get a cold, I cough, I sneeze, I recover from the cold. What does that mean?
Curable.
Curable. Goes away. It's gone. Yes, exactly right. But recovery in would suggest there are some things that are not going to go away. We got them. Right? I tell my clients, you know what? Sometimes life dishes up challenges and problems that we didn't necessarily want or ask for, but we got them. Right? So the key is to learn how to adapt and adjust, learn how to manage that challenge. Like my blindness, it's not ever going to go away. In fact, it's getting worse. Today I can kind of pick out a light on the ceiling. Another few months or a year, that will be gone, and so it's not going to get any better. So I can recover while still having a challenge. So as I learn how to manage it, I learn the skills on how to be a blind guy, or I learn the skills on how to manage schizophrenia, I can do it. So we coach our people and teach them, okay, if that medication didn't work, let's try something else. Let's adapt, let's adjust, let's not give up. Let's try a little bit different medication, and medication or dosage, increase the dosage, decrease the dosage. Too often people give up way too quick. I wish in mental health we had a blood test, an x-ray, something that we could test and say, oh, you have this problem, you need this medication. Boy, that would be nice. We don't have that yet. Maybe one day we'll have. There's been a recent thing that I've been using a little bit. I think there's mixed results on it because it's not getting a head of steam behind it. But where they swab the inside of your mouth, and that gives you a little bit of DNA and tells you what medication would be helpful. I think in the future we'll be getting more and more of those kind of things, so we can hone in on what medication might be the best for this person's body size, style, genetics, whatever. For today, it's, I hate to say guesswork, but it's kind of guesswork. The doctors do the best they can to evaluate your genetic history, your size, your body size, your age, your metabolism, all that kind of stuff, and make the most educated guess they can on that medication. Sometimes they get it right the first time, sometimes not. We also have to remember that some mental health concerns, some schizophrenia, bipolar, biochemical kinds of mental illness, depression, anxiety, are not curable. The medications aren't going to cure it. They do like cold medicine. They treat the symptoms. So it reduces, it calms the voices, calms the delusions, helps them think a little more clearly, make better decisions, but it doesn't cure the illness. Sometimes people have the belief, well, I'm taking all these meds and my schizophrenia is not going away. Well, I'm sorry, that's probably another generation or two down the road in medications. We don't have a cure.
2 more questions.
Yes.
Marilyn first.
The presenter said that individuals with mental health concerns still need consequences for their actions, just like any other defendant. To what degree should mental illness play a role in charging decisions or sentencing recommendations?
Very
Does
good.
it feel right or compassionate to disregard mental illness altogether? How can we be flexible to individual circumstances while avoiding stigma or holding people?
Marilyn, I probably should have had you come up and read that. That's longer than I can summarize, but I'll try.
Okay.
The summary of that long question is, Marilyn, just come read it up here, would you, so they can hear. That might be the better.
Get closer to the microphone.
Okay, the presenter said that individuals with mental health concerns still need consequences for their actions, just like any other defendant. To what degree should mental illness play a role in charging decisions or sentencing recommendations? He says it doesn't feel right or compassionate to disregard mental illness altogether. And then I'll give you the second one, if you want to answer that.
Okay, sure.
Do you want the second one?
Well, let's address the first one first.
Okay.
Okay, so you're right. We can't disregard it. I think you have to take into consideration the seriousness of the illness, the impact that it's having on their life, how treatable it is. Just like, for example, if you had a woman who comes in and she's 8 months pregnant, you're probably not going to send her to jail right now. Most jails don't like 8-month pregnant women incarcerated. So you want to take all the factors into consideration about how treatable is this person, How competent are they? If we often do competency evaluations to see if they're competent to stand trial or not. If they're not, then we often send them to the forensic unit of the state hospital, where we try to see if we can restore competency. If we can, and we can get them to understand the consequences of their choices, they need to have the consequences of their choices. So that's the one extreme. If they're not competent, if they're fully competent and they're depressed, they should have consequences to their choices just like anybody else. Mental illness is not an excuse. It might be a reason, and that's sometimes why we help them get into mental health court, is so we can treat the reason why they're making poor choices. But there still needs to be some consequences. I get frustrated with police officers that come to our clinic sometimes when a person has been violent and damaged property and hit a staff or something, and the police say, "Oh, they're mentally ill. We don't want to charge them." No. They still need to have consequences of their choices just like anybody else does. But sometimes we have to take into consideration maybe those consequences maybe are a little bit modified, or maybe we consider mental health court rather than a year in jail or something. But there often do need to be consequences depending on their competency.
Okay, you may
Hope
have
that
answered the
helps.
second one. The second question is, how can we be flexible to individual circumstances while avoiding stigma and holding people accountable?
Flexibility, I think, is really important. Your best friend there is consultation. If you've got a friend, a mental health professional in your local mental health authority, of course here in Salt Lake, it's Valley Behavioral Health and several others. Consult. If you can get information from the treating people who are treating them, psychiatrists, therapists who have been treating them, they can give you some good information about, this person is clueless. We could put them in jail for 10 years and they wouldn't get it. Or they might say, 2 nights in jail, and let's put them in our Thinking Matters group. In our mental health court, we send our clients to a group that we have at the mental health center called Thinking Matters. It teaches them about their thinking, challenges their thinking errors, challenges them to think first before they act. If you're delusional, all right, figure out what that delusional stuff is about. For people who are not too impaired, they can do that. People who are more impaired and seriously delusional, they can't do that. But the more we can teach them to think before they act and challenge your thinking errors. For example, we're probably out of time. I had a 67-year-old man come to me 2 years ago into mental health court. He shoplifted. He said, well, I knew that I'm older and I'm on Social Security and I don't have much money, and I wanted to buy birthday presents for my friend. And so Walmart is rich. They've got all these stores, and so they can afford to miss this $20 that I steal, and I deserve it, and I shouldn't have to suffer so long and be so poor. So those are thinking errors, right? Hopefully you can identify the thinking errors in his thinking. So anyway, consult with the therapist, doctors who are treating them, get some information and input from them.
Okay, the last question kind of flows into what you talked about being flexible, is for those cities and counties that, usually the smaller jurisdictions that don't have the benefit of a mental health court, suggestions on, how they handle patients or defendants with mental health issues. Very good. Our 4th District Court is quite large. We have, our ceiling is 40 participants. The Provo Justice Court, we've had 11, 12, 15. Right now, I think we have 3 or 4. Our Orem Court, it is not a full mental health court. What does Judge Parkin call that? It's a modified mental health court. He has 1 or 2 people, so he includes them in his calendar, but runs a mental health court-like model. For those of you out in rural areas, you might check with Judge Parkin at the Orem Justice Court. Is that his name? Yeah, Judge Parkin.
Yeah, it is Judge Parkin. All of a sudden I thought, wait, is it Parkin? Of course it is. I talk to him every month or so. Consult with him on how he weaves mental health court-like abilities into his justice court.
Yeah, actually, let me just jump in. So I was a prosecutor in Orem when Judge Parkin began the program. I don't remember what we called it, but we have another question, in justice court is it's kind of an extended probation court. And so what Judge Parkin is doing is he'll take some mental health clients similar to that, but it's not as formalized as a mental health court. But other people that he wants to keep on probation, we've had some chronic alcoholics, some drug offenders, other people that he is requiring that they get counseling, and so they come back. And so that's how Orem, you could reach out to Jake Summers and Aaron McKnight for some additional details, or to Judge Parkin, but that's how he has modified his program by not having a full-fledged mental health court.
And he involves the mental health center just like the mental health courts do.
Correct.
My staff, our case managers, go to the court once a month and report on their progress in treatment and suggesting sanctions just like they do in the bigger mental health courts.
Right, and that's something that they've been able to work out. So that would be a suggestion for the smaller counties, is if you have an agreement or you work with a specific mental health provider, if they would come in on a monthly basis. So that's a possible solution. We had one last question, Marilyn.
As a prosecutor, our options with mental health are limited to help now. Any idea of what the state of Utah is doing to address this? And he's
What's the state doing to address mental health concern? That's a loaded question.
That's probably above my pay grade.
So we will take that question as a possible future topic.
Okay.
Just because, I don't know the dean's qualified to answer that, and that probably exceeds, we're 7 minutes over.
Yep.
So we'll keep that for the training committee for a possible future topic.
So thank you for your participation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we appreciate Dean being here. It was, again, a good learning seminar, picked up some things that we need to do. So we will adjourn for lunch until 1 o'clock. Again, I just want to put a plug out there. If anybody is interested in coming in this afternoon, we've got Stephanie Pitcher, Representative Pitcher, is coming in and talking about her bail reform issue. If anybody has questions that you want to address to her as the drafter of that bill, we've also got Keeza Williams from the court that's talking about implementing that. So this would be a great opportunity for you to come and talk. And then Marlise is coming in talking about protective orders, and then we're going to end the day with Steve Garside talking about how we can help our officers be the best. And so if you've got some questions for that and working with your officers, training your officers.
And that's the civility.
And that's the civility issue. And if you can't make it in, we'll keep monitoring our texts and emails. So again, thank you, Dean, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock.